Hi. The other day, a friend asked me if I was happy, if I was having a good life. And in general, I believe I am. I'm enjoying peace of mind. I have no enemies, no debts, no pressing worries. And of course, I'm concerned about the state of the world, which is enough to make anyone cry. But uh, in general, I'm fairly peace. I have peace of mind, and I attribute it largely to the fact that for most of my working life, at least the last 45 plus years, I was a taxi driver, and that allowed me a certain freedom, a sense of freedom anyway, and uh, I was able to earn a modest but decent living, and on the whole, uh, that suited me. So, but it wasn't inevitably that way. I mean, back in 1973, I guess, when I started all that, I was at a crossroads. I could have taken a totally different turn, and luckily I didn't. But it was an interesting time because well, I worked for Mecca Bookmakers before that, and I was reasonably successful. I could manage a branch, a betting shop branch, and I could probably manage an even larger one. And there was some prospect of that. I could have got on in that, but I couldn't see any future in it, and so about 1973, I quit and I went and lived in a tent for a while and hitchhiked around mostly France and Spain. And when I came back, I basically was unemployed. I didn't want to go back to working for Mecca Bookmakers, but it was the only skill I had. I didn't have any qualifications, thanks in part to, well, look at my previous episodes and you'll find out why. Anyway, I was looking for a job, and some relatives of mine already worked in a firm called Marlowe Scott. And they said, "Why don't you come and join us at Marlowe Scott?" Well, I had nothing better to do, so I did. And Marlowe Scott was ostensibly an insurance broker. Uh, and most insurance, of course, at that time was contracted in person in an insurance broker, which was uh, which was able to where you were able to fill out a form, sign it, pay by check, and contract insurance. These days, it's all done online or even over the phone, but then basically it had to be done in person. I expect you could probably do it by post if you wanted to, but nobody did. Uh, so Marlowe Scott was ostensibly an insurance broker, but actually it was more of a criminal enterprise. Uh, I'll explain how later. The people who owned it were the beneficial owners anyway. Were two guys called Ricky and Clicky. We call him. He was called Clicky because he used to walk around clicking his fingers like that. And possibly there was a third, more mysterious owner, probably called Mickey, if I. But anyway, Ricky was a kind of tough Scottish ex-steel worker, and yeah, he was personable enough, but he was the sort of guy that would probably kill you and stick you in a lump of concrete if he had to. Clicky, on the other hand, he was frightened. He frightened me more because he was the sort of person that if he had to kill you, he'd probably enjoy it. But maybe I'm misjudging him, and maybe he wasn't like that. But that was the feeling. He certainly gave me the creeps anyway. Uh, the the way that the insurance broker worked was that, or the way that it was criminal really was that it took people's money and didn't pass it on to the insurance company. It must have passed on some now and again, probably to try and shift their liabilities, the ones that had had serious accidents or so on. But the way it worked in those days was that the insurance companies, and there were many of them, Lloyd's, they were all at Lloyd's. There were, I think, one called Palliser, another one called Norwich Union, which is now Aviva. And Northern Star was one of our favourites at the time. And what they used to do, these companies would issue a book of cover notes, so that when a customer came in and filled out the proposal form, you could give them a quote and issue them with a cover note, which would give them temporary cover for like 30 days or more or so. And the way that Marlowe Scott operated was that they would take as many of these books of cover notes as they could get from the insurance companies and direct customers towards the ones that they had cover notes for, discourage them from trying to use companies that they didn't have cover notes for, of course, and to get as much money out of them as possible and not forward their proposal form onto the insurance company. As I say, they must have forwarded some, otherwise all the insurance companies would have soon dried up, but not in general. And so there were a number of us employed there, me and a couple of my cousins, other relatives, and our main job was to fob people off. Inevitably, people would phone up and say, "Oh, I want to speak to the manager. My insurance certificate hasn't arrived yet," or "I have got a claim and I had an accident about a month ago and I haven't heard anything. I've reported it, filled out a claim form." And our job was to say, such phrases as, if they wanted to speak to the manager, we would say, "Unfortunately, he's not here at the moment. I'll get him to call you back as soon as he gets back." You might as well. Well, you didn't even bother writing that one down. Another thing you could say was, "Oh yes, Mr. So-and-so, your check is in the post. If it doesn't arrive tomorrow, let me know and I'll chase it up for you." And anyway, that was the main part of our job. And also when people phoned up to query their insurance, obviously, you'd go and get their file from the filing system, which was increasingly large, and you'd open the file, put your head in your hands. Oh my God, what have they done? And then try and work out some kind of way of weaseling out of your responsibilities or blaming somebody else or just smoothing things over. Anyway, the annoying thing is that actually this business had a lot of turnover. There were a lot of people who came in and insured through it, and or didn't insure through it, and it could have been quite a successful business, but half the people that worked there were just there trying to apologise for the basic mess that their insurance was in. And so it could have run on a much leaner staff if everybody had just filled out their form, sent off the form to the insurance companies and run things perfectly. It could have worked quite nicely. It would have provided a modest living for somebody who was prepared to, honestly work the system. But I don't know. I suppose Ricky and Clicky weren't that type of people. They just wanted to squeeze the business until it stopped yielding money, and squeeze it as hard as they could. I mean, one of the things they had was the company cars. There would be things like they had a Ferrari Dino and a BMW limousine, the biggest bloody BMW I've ever seen. And these were company cars. They didn't need a company car. They just, it was just a way of sort of getting money out of the business. You bought this expensive car and sold it, and maybe drove it around for a while, and then you could escape a bit of tax that way. And the other relatives of mine that worked there, I mean, one of them ended up in a different, ended up in prison, not as a result of what they were doing there, but actually they went off into some sort of harebrained scheme to raise money, and I think that was partly because the pressure they were experiencing at work. Another relative that worked there, a cousin, went on, he didn't go to prison or anything, but he just went on to be the kind of sleaze bag that he was before, and confined himself really to defrauding members of his own family. So, nobody came out of it well. Anyway, I worked there for like 2 or 3 or 4 weeks actually, and I was getting paid, and I was also claiming dole because, well, I Scott, why would they care? They wouldn't pay you a stamp anyway, or anything like that. So they were quite content for me to do that, and I just realised it was going to end in tears, and I was there for 4 weeks, and at the end of 4 weeks, I packed it in. I gave it up, and by that time, I'd already become, unbeknownst to me, and in ways that I don't understand, had become a director of the company. It took me ages to wriggle out of that. I suppose if I'd been there long enough, more and more blame would have attached to me, and more criminality. It was a slippery slope, and I escaped from it. I had to repay. I repaid the dole money I'd got under false pretenses. Wasn't very much, fortunately, and I applied simultaneously or soon afterwards. Once I'd got the all clear that I wasn't going to end up being prosecuted for it in any way, I started on the knowledge and embarked on my career as a taxi driver. And it was a huge relief to get out of there without the whole house of cards falling on me. So, as you can see, I was lucky to escape from a life of criminality, and I God damn. So, as you can see, I was lucky to have escaped from a potential life of criminality. And although I went back to working for Mecca Bookmakers for a while I was doing the knowledge, and then it worked quite well with that, um, I was lucky to escape from not a life of criminality, but a life of uh, that depended on vice and weakness of other people, because gambling is a foolish thing to do, and well, it's just not very satisfying to profit out of other people's foolishness. Anyway, I went on to do the knowledge, and well, it obviously suited me because I stuck with it for a very long time, and I'd still be doing it probably now if COVID hadn't come along and put the mockers on it for me. Anyway, I'll see you later.
Troubling mind, Lord, I'm blue, but I want